Welcome to the Dow Nerds. Today I am talking about differences in muscle fiber performance. So in my last video I talked about the differences in muscle fiber machinery in terms of their architecture, their structure, their proteins isoforms and mitochondria and all of that. You can go back and watch it if you haven't, so you can get up to speed. And today we are talking about muscle fiber performance or differences in the types of muscle fibers as it relates to their performance. The crossbridge is the unit of force generation within the muscle fiber. And if you haven't watched my video on the crossbridge cycle, you can go back and watch it. I'll leave an annotation somewhere in here. So you can go back, watch that video so you can understand how exactly the crossbridge cycle works. But for the purpose of this video, we will talk about the performance in the crossbridge cycle. So in the crossbridge cycle we have many different phases. We have the association phase, the power stroke phase, and the attachment phase, and the pre-stroke phase, and all of those phases can be decomposed in other phases and so on. But when it comes to performance, we look at speed and at what speed can the crossbridge cycle progress. Within the crossbridge cycling, we have three phases that are the rate limiting steps or the rate limiting phases for how fast the crossbridge cycling can progress. The first one being the inorganic phosphate release, the second one being the ATP release, and the last one, or the third one, is the ATP hydrolysis. So you can imagine that we will start to characterize the speed in which the muscle fiber can contract based on how fast they can progress through those rate limiting steps. Basically all the other phases are very fast, so they don't hamper the speed of the crossbridge cycling. But these three phases, the inorganic phosphate release, the ADP release, and the ATP hydrolysis, they consume a lot more time, so the faster they can go on, they can be achieved, the faster the crossbridge cycle will be. In the inorganic phosphate release phase, also called the force generating phase, type 2X muscle fibers accomplish that phase a lot faster than type 2A muscle fibers, which are also faster than type 1 muscle fibers. And the ADP release phase, the type 2X muscle fibers are 2 times faster than the type 1 muscle fibers, and the type 2A muscle fibers are 1.5 times faster than the type 1 muscle fibers. And lastly, at the ATP hydrolysis, the type 2X muscle fibers are 5 times faster than the type 1, and the type 2A are 4 times faster than the type 1 muscle fibers. So at the crossbridge cycling, the fast isoforms, the type 2A and type 2X's, are a lot faster at progressing through these rate limiting steps, the inorganic phosphate release, the ADP release, and the ATP hydrolysis, which just means they have a faster kinetics in the crossbridge cycling. One thing to note is that the type 1 isoform actually stays a lot longer in the force holding phase, which is the ADP, when myosin and actin are bound with ADP inside of the myosin. This is called the force holding phase, and type 1 muscle fibers are a lot better at holding force than the fastest types of muscle fibers, the type 2A and the type 2X's. So those are the differences in between muscle fibers within the crossbridge cycling level. Now we get into the whole muscle fiber and how actually muscle fibers perform at the fiber level within themselves. So we have four types of parameters to characterize the muscle fiber performance. The first one being contraction speed, the second one being strength, the third one being power, and the last one is efficiency. So when it comes to contraction speed or shortening speed, we have the type 2X muscle fiber being the fastest one, the type 2A being the second fastest one, and the type 1 being the slowest one. Now, when it comes to contraction speed, the type 2X muscle fiber is 9 times faster at contracting than the type 1 muscle fibers. And the type 2A are 6 times faster than the type 1 muscle fibers. Well, let us use an analogy so that you can better understand what this actually means in a practical manner. So let's imagine an aircraft. Let's imagine we have several types of aircrafts. The type 2X muscle fibers would be a Lockheed Blackbird, capable of 3,500 kilometers per hour in its top speed. The type 2A muscle fibers would be a MiG-21, capable of going at 2,300 kilometers per hour in its top speed. And the type 1 muscle fibers will be a Cessna, capable of going 400 kilometers per hour in its max speed. So you can see that in between 400 kilometers per hour and 3,500, there's a lot of difference in contraction speed within muscle fibers. Secondly, we move on to strength. In the strength category, we have the type 2X muscle fibers being the strongest one. They are 2 times as strong as the type 1 muscle fibers, and the type 2A muscle fibers are 1.5 times stronger than the type 1 muscle fibers. So using again an analogy, let's imagine we have 3 different kinds of bros. They all go to the gym, they all squat like you should, right? Everybody should squat. And the bro number 1 is the type 1 muscle fiber type, and he can squat 180 kilograms. The second bro is the type 2A muscle fiber, and he can squat 270 kilograms. And the last bro is the strongest bro, the type 2X muscle fiber, and he can squat 360 kilograms. Thirdly, we move on to power. In the power category, we also have the type 2X phenotype as being the most powerful phenotype in terms of muscle fiber phenotypes. So the type 2X muscle fiber is 4 times stronger, or more powerful, I should say, than the type 1 muscle fiber. And the type 2A muscle fiber is 3 times more powerful than the type 1 muscle fiber. And to use another analogy, this time we use a car analogy. You can imagine that the type 2X muscle fiber is a Bugatti Chiron with 1500 horsepower, and the type 2A is also Bugatti, only this time is a Super Sport with 1100 horsepower, and the type 1 muscle fiber is a BMW M2 with 370 horsepower. So that's a lot more horsepower, a lot more power in the fast phenotypes than in the slow phenotype, the muscle heavy chain 1 phenotype. And lastly, we have efficiency. When it comes to efficiency, the most efficient isoform or the most efficient phenotype is the muscle heavy chain 1 phenotype. It's 5 times more efficient than the type 2X's, and it is 4 times more efficient than the type 2A muscle fibers. In this analogy, let's say you are bro 1, which possesses a type 1 phenotype. Let's say you work out for 1 hour, you would burn up 100 kilocalories per hour. Now Bro 2, the type 2A phenotype, would burn up an excess of 400 kilocalories per hour, and the last bro, the wasteful bro, the type 2X bro, would burn 500 kilocalories per hour. So you can view it as a good or a bad thing. It depends if you want to be an endurance athlete or a power athlete who wants to be lean and quick. So that's it. That's the differences in performance in between muscle fibers. Now you know the differences in or within the cross-breed cycling, within different types of muscle fibers, and also in the physical parameters of contraction speed and strength, power and efficiency. So when we put all of this together and kind of build the Lego of performance, we simply get that the myosin heavy chain 1 slow isoform is weak, powerless and slow. But on the other hand, they are fatigue resistant and very efficient. As for the type 2 muscle fibers, the fast phenotypes, the type 2A and the type 2X's, they are fast, very fast, super strong, a lot more powerful than the type 1 muscle fibers, but on the other hand they are very fatigable and a lot less efficient than the type 1 muscle fibers. So this simply means that if you want to do a lot of work fast and in a powerful manner, if you need strength, if you need power, and if you need to be quick, very fast, you would be interested in building a phenotype, a type 2 phenotype. And if on the other hand, if you want to run for long periods of time at a slow pace with less load, so you require less strength, but you can endure long periods of workload without fatiguing out and being more efficient, you would build a type 1 phenotype. So that's it, my nerds. Now you know the differences in muscle fiber phenotypes in terms of their performance. Don't forget to subscribe, leave a like, turn on the bell so you can be notified. On the last video of this video series, which will be the next video, I will tell you if you should be training based on your own fiber type phenotype so you can achieve maximum hypertrophy. And I will see you there.